So good to have you join us today. Hello and welcome to Business Daily. I'm Lee-Jiun in Seoul. We have a lot lined up for you today, but first let's take a quick look at the day's highlights. Korea's economic policies for next year are out, and the country's growth forecast along with inflation target band have been adjusted. We sit down with an expert to take a closer look at the changes expected in the new year. The number of newly created jobs dropped below 300,000 in November on the back of sharp losses in the agro-fisheries and retail sectors. The Korean economy is facing a tough year ahead, with multiple factors posing challenges from both at home and abroad. With that, private institutions are skeptical about Korea achieving its 3% range growth next year, but the government remains confident about this, promising to keep a close eye on low prices and cutting red tape. Our Hong Jie has the details.
Korea expects its economy to expand 3.1% in 2016. That's a trim from an earlier forecast of 3.3%, but still higher than the mid-2% range that a majority of private financial institutions have put forward. It says it will also evaluate the country's economic expansion based on current prices, offering not only real GDP growth but nominal growth figures as well, a move reflecting the government's drive to keep better tabs on deflationary concerns.
The nominal growth rate has to remain at appropriate levels so that corporate sales and household income can rise. That will in turn raise government tax revenue. With the Bank of Korea, we will do our best to reach the 3% range of real GDP growth and nominal growth within the 5% range.
To reach that target, the economy management plan for next year puts emphasis on easing regulations to boost investment and come up with new growth engines. The government plans to designate regulation-free areas in 14 different regions across the country, with the goal of fostering industries like biohealth, eco-friendly vehicles, and cosmetics. This project follows the state-driven program this year to build 17 creative economy innovation centers around the nation. Also on the agenda for next year is completing structural reforms in the labor, education, finance, and public sectors. But experts are skeptical as to whether the government will be able to push through such reforms with Parliament still deadlocked over pending labor bills.
Korea has general elections next year and the presidential election the year after. With political events like these, the government will face major opposition in completing the reforms, and they may lose steam.
Another challenge Seoul will take on is diffusing threats posed by snowballing household debt and corporate debt in the face of a possible rate hike by the U.S. Federal Reserve. The move will allow troubled firms to begin corporate workout programs before their deteriorating financial health becomes irreparable. Through these structural changes, the government aims to realize growth that can be felt by the public, as much of the focus this year was on regaining the country's economic vitality. Hong Jie, Business Daily.
And we have fresh inflation targets for the next 3 years coming out from the Bank of Korea. And they have been cut from the previous target band. Now, the new target comes after criticisms that formal goals had simply been set too high. Our Shin Se-min has more.
The Bank of Korea lowered its annual inflation target to 2% starting 2016, scrapping its current policy of using a target band for consumer prices. The new inflation goal is down from the existing target range of 2.5% to 3.5%, set to expire as of this year. The target is considered the optimal rate of inflation for the economy, described by the BOK as being the most desirable level of price growth for stable economic expansion. Citing weaker inflationary pressure, the central bank attributed the trimmed target to the country's aging population, heightened price competition in exports, and weakening growth potential influenced by a prolonged fall in crude oil costs. All things considered, the BOK said it expects consumer prices to pick up an average 1.7% next year.
Lowering the target to 2% is a sign Korea is following the lead taken by developed countries like Canada and the UK, and shows its determination to achieve stable economic growth down the line.
Under the current target band set back in late 2012, the central bank had missed projections for consumer price growth every month for more than 2.5 years, sparking criticism and pushing it to put forward more attainable goals and assume responsibility. Starting next year, if the actual inflation rate deviates from the targeted 2% by more than 0.5 percentage points for 6 consecutive months, the top central banker will be required to hold a news conference to explain why. With the lower inflation goal, the central bank also brought Korea's potential growth rate down a notch, projecting it'll stand between 3 to 3.2% leading up to 2018. 신세민, Business Daily.
And to tell us more about this, Kim Il-sun, director of the Society for National Infrastructure at Hanyang University, joins us in the studio today. So good to see you, Professor.
Pleasure.
So despite the fact that the Finance Ministry marked down growth figures for this year to 2.7%, growth figures for growth forecast for 2016 has been set at 3.1%, which is slightly down from its earlier estimate of 3.3%, but it is still in the 3% range.
Yes.
Do you think this is a tangible goal?
Well, I believe it is an ideal and tangible goal at the same time because the Korea targets 3.1% growth rate is in line with the IMF setting 3.6 worldwide economic growth rate. They are in conjunction with each other. The biggest reason to achieve is to achieve a price level stabilization. And through many metrics, Bank of Korea has determined that 3.1 would be in line with creating optimal price level stabilization.
All right. Well, what stands out, though, is the government's goal to, I guess, stay with its strong macroeconomic policy stance. It said it will manage both the real and nominal growth rates. Why the emphasis on the nominal performance, though?
They want to create a more stable economy in the coming years. The actual growth of the economy for next 3 years of time has to be triggered next year because the government only has 1 year to create a movement because the current administration's term period only has about 1 year. And the next year will be about the only chance to make things happen.
Well, let's talk about the inflation target band set from the Bank of Korea. There has been criticism that the inflation target band had been set too high, so it did adjust it to 2% from the 2.5 to 3.5% target band set for the past 3 years.
That's right.
Now, what's behind this decision?
Well, basically speaking, the 2% target is mostly set by the stable and advanced nations out there. So when Korea is setting the 2% target rate, it is gearing towards entering the advanced state. Furthermore, if the actual prices and economic target are different, monetary policy may lose its precision in achieving the great economy. So that it is set clearly in advance in order to create a sustainable economic growth. So the central bank setting the inflation target and producing the monetary policy to achieve the certain price target in the future, and they setting that 2% would be ideal and the optimal point they can pursue for the next few years of time.
Now, also plans were put forth to boost domestic spending as well as to help the struggling exporters. What were some of those plans, and do you think those plans are sufficient?
Yes, government is doing everything they can, it seems like. For example, government is increasing the export financing package by about $20 billion to support the Korean exports to reach out the worldwide markets. They are designating 5 promising industries to support, such as cosmetics, foods, and the infant products. It's improving both the qualitative and quantitative measures of the export initiatives. And also to back the domestic spending, government is increasing its budget to boost the national internal spending, and especially for the Q1 of 2016, where they see some hesitance move forward. So if they trigger the first quarter of next year, they see a more smooth transition to growing the economy for the year 2016.
Well, you also mentioned this a little bit before, but the presidential election is coming up in 2017, which means the current administration has about a year left in order to carry out the economic reforms that it had planned to carry out in the areas of labor, public finance, and education. Now, what are some of the tasks remaining on its list?
Well, for labor, there are 5 laws to be passed for the labor reform, and the government is gearing towards finishing it and clearing out by the end of 2015, which we only have about 2 weeks of time, so time is ticking. And the finance, the internet bank will be open for business in 2016. It is a new way to revolutionize the banking industry and banking sector in line with the fintech industries. And for public, the recalibration of the functions of various public organizations is in works to create more effective and optimal operation state. And for education, for the universities to create adjustment for the student body levels is in place, and they're designating certain universities to take the leadership on it. So, and also, they're creating notable deregulations. They're lifting the green belt to boost the construction industry. They're also creating tax deduction supports, as well as to create a massive number of rental housings. So what they're saying is that they want to create a visible effect so that the citizens of Korea can feel that there is a growth happening on their skin in the next few years of time. They're doing everything they can to make it happen.
And speaking of reforms and relaxing regulations, one thing to note is the government's so-called 14 regulation-free zones. What exactly are these zones, and what does the government expect to achieve through this?
Well, the Korean government is relaxing its regulations on specific industries to a zero-level regulation level, and it's on a region-specific manner as well. For example, Busan is designated for a marine tourism and Internet of Things, IoT, and Gwangju for eco-friendly automobiles and new energy, and Chungcheongbuk-do is for biomed and cosmetics. What they're doing is that they are setting the strategic industries to boost and to give financial support such as tax benefits and all that perk to create both the key promise industries and the regions of different part of Korea to boost at the same time. It's like kill 2 birds with one stone approach.
All right. Thank you so much for your insight today.
Okay. You're welcome.
The U.S. Federal Reserve's top policymakers have started their 2-day meeting, where a vast majority of analysts expect them to pull the trigger and start raising rates for the first time in nearly a decade. Ahead of the Fed's announcement, U.S. stocks closed higher on Tuesday as energy and financial shares rebounded on a pickup in oil prices. The Dow Jones Industrial Average closed up 0.9%, the S&P 500 added over 1%, and the Nasdaq rose 0.87%. In the UK, the FTSE 100 gained 2.45%, while Germany's DAX 30 added more than 3%. But the rate hike may not be welcome news for emerging economies. Some analysts say it could trigger a massive capital outflow from these markets, including Korea, to places with higher returns on investment, and could possibly spark a financial crisis. The number of newly hired workers here in Korea fell in November, with just 285,000 added to the workforce. That's down from 348,000 new positions offered in October. Statistics Korea attributed the drop to job losses in the farming and fishing sectors due to bad weather conditions. Available work in the wholesale and retail sectors also shrunk significantly. The manufacturing sector, on the other hand, continued to fuel job growth by creating 190,000 new jobs. But in terms of youth unemployment, the jobless rate in November rose to 8.1%, up from 7.4% in October. The price competition among phone makers might get fiercer here in Korea. This as one of the country's top mobile carriers, LGU Plus, started exclusive distribution of Chinese phone maker Huawei's Y6 smartphone on Tuesday. Now, the phone comes with the lowest factory price to date here in Korea at around $130. Users can even get the handset for free if they receive phone subsidies and sign up for a monthly plan of at least $25. Experts say an increasing number of consumers are turning to mid to low priced phones after the government banned mobile carriers from offering excessive discounts last year. It also comes with much better performance seen recently from budget phones. Market watchers say more low-priced Chinese smartphones are set to enter the Korean market next year. Now, who's the most stressed among Koreans? Well, a new survey found that women in general were more stressed out than men. But there was one demographic in which men surpassed that of women. Our Eunice Kim tells us more.
Among adults, Korean men in their 30s and 40s are the most stressed out, according to Statistics Korea.
Men in their 30s are either looking for work or, if they are working, they are taking on the heaviest load at their jobs. So there's a lot of job-related stress.
Men in their 40s are in middle management, so there's a lot of pressure there. At work, you have to bring in results, and at home, there's childcare and retirement planning.
Its report, dubbed Korean Social Trends 2015, released earlier this month, showed that women in general were more stressed than men. But the exception was found in the 30s to 40s demographic. At 29 and 27% respectively, men were 2 to 4 percentage points higher than their female counterparts. Indeed, the most stressed for both males and females were high school students at the peak of their college entrance exam preparation. Those who were least stressed were women in their 50s at 21% and men in their 60s at 12%. Compared to their counterparts in other developed countries, Koreans showed more experience with low self-confidence and depression. At 11% and 13% respectively, the figures were higher than the average of 29 advanced countries, calculated to be 7.3 and 10.7%. But the report added, in general, stress and depression levels among Korean men and women were on a downward trajectory, showing gradual signs of improvement. Eunice Kim, Business Daily.
And that does it for today, but we'll be back tomorrow with more business news that matters to you. Thanks for watching and have a great day.